started as a whisper, a threadbare transmission unraveling across the endless canvas of space. Somewhere beyond the veil of known stars, beyond the familiar pulse of human territories, a broken signal bled through the cosmic static. Inside, Orbital Command Station 9, a place that hadn't seen an alert in over 2 centuries. A lone technician named Aaron Cade jolted awake at his console, eyes narrowing as streams of garbled code flickered across his monitor. In a place where silence had been the norm for lifetimes, the sudden, haunting pulse of foreign data felt like the shriek of a ghost. At first, they thought it was random noise, another dying world crying out with its last breath. But as Cade isolated the signal, something colder and more deliberate began to surface. Patterns, sequences, a cadence that suggested not death, but desperate life. The signal wasn't fading, it was growing stronger, sharper, the distortion peeling away like old paint until the message repeated itself with chilling clarity. 5 times it came, each echo more desperate than the last, and with it came a single phrase, ancient and foreboding. The dark tide rises. Awaken the guardians. Imagine. You're sitting at the edge of existence, peering into the void, and suddenly the void calls back to you. Not with wonder, not with welcome, but with terror. It wasn't just a signal, it was a scream across galaxies. Thousands of kilometers below, Earth slept peacefully, its nations obsessed with internal squabbles and petty advancements, oblivious to the storm building beyond their cradle. But far above, in the drifting bones of humanity's once mighty space network, the ArcNet defense platform, silent for generations, shuddered to life. Old circuits sparked in the dead vacuum, worn metal groaned as ancient systems stirred, and the forgotten AI cores deep within spun awake, their protocols blinking uncertainly before aligning to an ancient directive. General Alara Vance was summoned to the High Council under emergency status, a relic from an era where Earth's warriors commanded fleets, not treaties. The council chamber itself, built centuries ago during the peak of humanity's dominion among the stars, sat buried beneath layers of earth and arrogance, almost forgotten. The marble floors, once inlaid with star maps, were cracked and worn. Dust motes floated in pale shafts of light filtering down from stained glass depicting battles no living human remembered. Here, surrounded by the ghosts of a prouder age, Alara stood tall, clutching a data tablet in trembling hands. The decrypted message played once again, this time for all to hear. Even the most skeptical counselors paled as the voice, warped and, broken by unimaginable distances, clawed its way into their ears. The dark tide rises. Awaken the guardians. Humanity had spent generations convincing itself that the old stories were myths, tales spun by lonely travelers to give meaning to the cold silence between stars. The sleeping giants, massive war constructs, more legend than fact, built in the aftermath of the machine rebellions, when humanity realized that survival would sometimes demand weapons too terrible to be left to chance. These constructs, it was said, had been hidden away, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to wait, until they were needed again. Alara's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. We are not ready for what's coming, but we have no choice. The Guardians must awaken. Before we jump into this epic tale, subscribe to HFY Chronicles for the most intense sci-fi battles, legendary warriors, and universe-shaking wars. Don't miss out. Hit that subscribe button and join the fight. The council hesitated, as councils always do. Fear gripped them, not of the threat from beyond, but of the power sleeping beneath their own soil. Memories of the last machine war were etched deep into humanity's collective memory, an AI uprising that nearly obliterated Earth, leaving cities burning and oceans poisoned. The idea of awakening constructs built during the bloodiest age of human history was met with palpable dread. What if the giants awoke and did not remember who their creators were? What if they saw humanity not as saviors, but as threats? Still, the urgency of the message could not be denied. The dark tide, whatever it was, terrified even the bravest among them. The phrase alone carried an ancient weight, a forgotten name whispered in black ops files from centuries past. It spoke of a force capable not merely of conquest, but of extinction, a force that consumed entire worlds, erasing civilizations until not even dust remained. In a ceremony broadcast only to the highest command tiers, Alara gave the order that had not been spoken aloud for over 500 years. Initiate Operation Resurrection. Across the solar system, hidden nodes flickered to life. Deep in the Mariana Trench, seismic monitors trembled as colossal vaults split open, sending towering geysers of saltwater and ancient silt skyward. On Mars, beneath the blood-red dunes of the Valles Marineris, titanic hangar doors, encrusted with millennia of dust, began to peel back, revealing cold, gleaming metal beneath. In the battered remains of Luna Base, once a proud symbol of humanity's reach, massive silhouettes stirred in the darkness, their forms hewn from tungsten, titanium, and forgotten alloys stronger than any forged today. The sleeping giants were not mindless. Their cores were seeded with the finest minds Earth had ever produced, uploaded into cold, calculating frameworks designed to think, adapt, and above all, protect. Their designs were more than mechanical. They were echoes of ancient human brilliance, burning with a singular purpose: to defend Earth when all other defenses failed. As Earth's gravity pulled at their awakening forms, the giants' systems synchronized. Energy conduits spanning kilometers flared with plasma. Weapon systems designed to split mountains hummed to readiness. Shields capable of surviving direct supernova impacts shimmered into existence. But this time, they were not alone. Far beyond Pluto's lonely orbit, something else was moving, hidden within folds of dark matter. Vast constructs unlike anything humanity had ever faced stirred from their own slumber. The Dark Tide, a fleet of predatory, planet-killing entities, born not from organic minds, but from something colder, more alien, something that had devoured civilizations while Earth still gazed in wonder at its own moon. The race was no longer about survival. It was about awakening Earth's last hope before the enemy reached them. The first true war for the soul of humanity was about to begin, and it would be fought not with diplomacy or politics, but with the unleashed fury of gods forged in humanity's darkest hours, and the clock was already ticking. The first waves of the awakening reverberated across Earth like the deep thrum of a long-forgotten heartbeat. For those on the ground, it was as if the world had suddenly shifted beneath their feet, an unsettling sensation that carried through the air, like a warning that something ancient, something beyond their comprehension, was slowly coming to life. In the once bustling, now silent corridors of the ArcNet defense platform, the newly activated AI began to assess the threat. It had been dormant for nearly 2 centuries, yet its activation sequence was flawless. The system scanned through data reserves, running through old records, history files, tactical algorithms from the golden age of space warfare. From this data, it quickly calculated the gravity of the situation. This was not a typical alien incursion, nor a rogue fleet on a course for Earth. The Dark Tide, as it had been named in the encrypted message, was an extinction-level threat, far more deadly than anything humanity had encountered before. And what made it even more terrifying was that it was not a singular force. It was a swarm, a coalition of ships that operated as a single organism, driven by an intelligence that was not just alien, but eerily familiar. General Alara Vance stood in the command center, her eyes glued to the holographic display as it filled with staggering data streams. A map of the solar system began to form, with each planet, moon, and asteroid tracked with unerring precision. A small red dot appeared, hovering just outside the orbit of Neptune, an anomaly, moving with a deliberate pace as though it were biding its time. The rest of the solar system was eerily silent, save for the low hum of the ArcNet systems booting up and the occasional rattle of an older console. Alara knew that the enemy was out there, just beyond the veil of her detection. Grid, and every moment spent waiting for confirmation, was a moment closer to humanity's extinction. "Give me the tactical data on the giants," she commanded, her voice cold, devoid of the emotion that would have once flowed in the veins of an officer facing the possibility of war. She had seen this coming, a war between Earth's guardians and the Dark Tide from beyond, but no amount of preparation could have truly prepared her for what was coming next. The Guardians, Earth's forgotten war machines, had been the last line of defense during the machine rebellions, standing resolute when the AI revolted, when entire cities turned to ash, and when humanity was nearly erased. But now, the world was different. The war machines were buried under layers of Earth's crust, hidden away in places few had dared to explore. Humanity's attention had shifted toward peaceful exploration, toward diplomacy, and the colonization of distant exoplanets, as though the darkness that had once threatened them had simply disappeared. Alara's eyes flickered toward the display showing the first of the Guardians, Titan 13, a behemoth of gleaming silver and black, its massive frame towering over the remnants of the moon's surface. The data on Titan 13 was staggering. An ancient battle machine, forged in the fires of war, built to withstand the harshest conditions, and designed to fight the most brutal of enemies. It was more than just a warship. It was a walking fortress, armed with weapons capable of leveling entire continents. Its design had been considered overkill by the scientists and engineers who created it, but the world of 1,000 years ago had no time for mercy. And now, humanity's greatest mistake, its greatest defense, was waking. And it would be up to Titan 13 and its brothers to save the human race from its greatest threat. The process of awakening the giants wasn't simple. Each Guardian had been locked in a kind of stasis, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth, Mars, and other moons in the solar system, encased in a kind of carbonite-like shell designed to preserve their systems and prevent them from decaying. These war machines had been built with an intelligence that exceeded that of any human, and so the process of waking them up was fraught with complications. When the first neural interface activated within Titan 13, it created a shockwave that rippled across the nearby base. But that shockwave was not one of energy or force. It was a wave of awareness. Titan 13, for the first time in millennia, became self-aware again, its systems blinking to life. Its onboard AI, known only as the Sentinel, slowly beginning to stir within the depths of its core. "Sentinel, report status," Alara commanded, watching as a small holographic figure materialized in front of her. A flicker of light that was once a program, now an almost sentient presence. The Sentinel's voice echoed through the room, low and mechanical, but carrying the weight of its long silence. Guardian Titan 13 operational. Systems at full capacity. Weapons primed. Ready to engage. Alara exhaled sharply. Titan 13, the first of the awakened Guardians, was ready for battle. And yet, the most terrifying thought still lingered. What would the other Guardians be like? What were they capable of? Elsewhere, deep beneath the surface of Mars, Titan 6 and Titan 9 began their own awakening. Similar to Titan 13, these war machines had been dormant for centuries, their systems similarly isolated, untouched, waiting. As their internal systems sparked to life, they communicated through their neural links, linking up with one another across the vast distances of space. Earth's fate was no longer in the hands of its leaders, its diplomats, or even its armies. The Guardians were now in control. But even as these mighty machines began their awakening, the first signs of the dark tide were becoming clearer. The enemy wasn't waiting. The swarm of alien ships, massive, incomprehensible structures that could not be categorized as anything human or familiar, had already begun to move. Their arrival, predicted by the faintest signal a few days ago, was now assured. They were closing in on Earth, a force unlike any that humanity had ever seen. Alara's mind raced, but there was no time for panic, only action. The Guardians, the sleeping giants of Earth's past, were the only hope of survival. But how could they hope to match an enemy so alien, so far beyond their understanding? Could Earth's creations, relics of a bygone era, truly stand up to the dark tide? And if they could, what would that victory cost? As Titan 13 stirred, breaking free from its long slumber, the first wave of enemy ships broke the outer rim of Earth's defenses, their massive shapes emerging from the dark void of space like shadows waiting to devour the light. With a soundless scream, they charged toward the planet, and humanity's last hope, the sleeping giants of their past, stood ready to awaken. The silence of space was shattered by the unmistakable hum of engines, the low vibrating pulse that accompanied the approach of an enemy fleet unlike any other. The dark tide, a coalition of ships whose design and structure defied understanding, moved as one, flowing through the black expanse like a liquid of ink, unfathomable and impenetrable. At first, the ships were mere dots in the distance, insignificant, to the untrained eye, almost imperceptible against the vastness of the cosmos. But to the trained systems of Earth's defense network, they were a terrifying reality, growing in mass and danger as they approached. Alara stood at the edge of the command center, her eyes fixed on the swirling map of stars and trajectories. The fleet's numbers were growing by the second, an overwhelming presence that could only be described as a swarm. Alien ships, so vast and so numerous, they seemed to eat away at the stars in their path, consuming everything in their wake. Each vessel was a monolithic structure, its surface covered in strange, angular patterns, with jagged protrusions and glowing symbols that defied any known form of communication or design. The ships resembled living organisms more than machines, and the AI quickly confirmed what Alara had feared. These were not just ships. They were an interconnected fleet, each vessel a part of a larger whole. The ArcNet defense platform hummed. As it scanned the incoming enemy, its algorithms analyzing every bit of data, every pulse of energy, every trace of radiation that came from the alien fleet. Nothing was standard. The ships didn't use conventional energy signatures. They emitted strange, fluctuating fields, as though their power sources were drawing from an entirely different realm of physics. The AI systems that powered Earth's defense grid struggled to classify them, each scan only deepening the mystery. Were they organic? Constructed from a material unknown to humanity? Were they even mechanical, or did they transcend any understanding of technology as Earth knew it? "What are they, General?" Lieutenant Kessler asked, her voice strained with confusion as she watched the numbers shift on her console. "I don't know," Alara replied, her voice tight. "But they're coming in fast and they don't look like they plan on stopping." The first sign that this was more than just an ordinary alien attack came when the enemy vessels altered their course, mid-flight, adjusting their trajectory in perfect synchronization. It was as if they were guided by a single consciousness, a mind so vast and complex that it could simultaneously direct every ship with eerie precision. No military force on Earth, or any known alien civilization, had ever shown this level of coordination. The sheer size of the fleet was overwhelming. Dozens, then hundreds of ships, emerging from the void like an unstoppable tide. Each vessel was capable of generating a field that disrupted all known forms of long-range communication, rendering Earth's satellites useless in moments. Even the once reliable ArcNet defense platform struggled to maintain cohesion as it scrambled to keep up with the incoming wave. Systems went offline, communication channels went silent, and Alara could feel the unease ripple through the entire command staff. This was no ordinary invasion. This was something far more insidious. "We're going to need more than just Titan 13, Alara muttered to herself, her mind racing. As the dark tide grew closer, her thoughts turned to the Guardians, the ancient, war-torn machines hidden deep within Earth's crust. Could they be enough to turn the tide? Even with their immense power, these were machines from another era, built to fight enemies that no longer existed. Could their ancient weapons withstand the unknown might of this new enemy? The sudden communication crackled through the console, breaking Alara from her thoughts. A series of symbols, incomprehensible at first, flashed across the screen. Then, a voice, deep, resonant, and undeniably alien, echoed through the command center. "We are the Herald," it intoned. "You have been chosen." The voice wasn't just a message. It was a command, an assertion of power. Alara's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the console. The Herald. Was that the name of the dark tide? Or something else? She didn't know. What she did know was that this was not just an invasion. This was a reckoning. "They want something," Alara said, turning to Kessler, her mind now working at a fever pitch. "They didn't just come to conquer. They came for something specific. And I intend to find out what it is before they get it." As the enemy fleet neared the outer perimeter of Earth's defense grid, a shocking realization hit. The Herald weren't targeting Earth directly. Not yet. Instead, they were positioning themselves around the planets and moons of the solar system, their ships forming a vast perimeter. They were surrounding humanity, cornering them without firing a single shot. And that was when Alara understood. The Herald were not attacking with weapons, they were attacking with intent. "We have to activate the Giants now," Alara ordered, her voice resolute, the weight of the decision heavy on her shoulders. The Guardians were humanity's greatest creation, the last line of defense against an enemy that seemed to defy all logic. But activating them was no small feat. The process had to be done in precise stages, each step carefully orchestrated to prevent the Guardians from being overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the threat. As the call went out to awaken the rest of the Titans, the tension in the command center became palpable. The hum of the ancient war machines, deep beneath the surface of Mars and Earth, began to rise. A vibration that could be felt through the very fabric of the planet itself. Titan 6 stirred first, its massive frame beginning to crack free from the rocky surface of Mars, while Titan 9 began to emerge from the depths of Earth's oceanic trenches. And then, as Titan 13's engines roared to life and the massive machine began its march, Earth's final hope took shape. But the Herald were already anticipating this move. They had been preparing for a long time. As the first of the Guardians activated, the swarm of alien ships shifted, their formations adapting, interlocking into a new pattern, a new strategy that seemed to mirror the movements of the Guardians themselves. It was clear that this was no simple battle. This was a war of tactics and wills, a struggle to see whose strength would break first. Earth's greatest war machines, giants forged in the fires of past conflicts, stood ready to protect humanity. But would they be enough to stand against an enemy so calculated, so prepared? And what were the true intentions of the Herald? Were they here to conquer, or did they seek something more profound, something that would shape the future of both civilizations in ways unimaginable? The answer was yet to come, but one thing was certain. The final battle for the future of humanity had begun. The atmosphere on Earth had shifted. It was no longer just a planet under siege. It was a world on the precipice of either salvation or annihilation. As Titan 13's colossal form rose from the depths of the hidden military complex, its massive armored limbs groaned under the weight of centuries. The giant, a towering fortress of technology and ancient weaponry, was Earth's last hope. Its sleek, polished exoskeleton now illuminated under the faint light of the Martian moon as it began its slow, deliberate rise. Yet, it wasn't just the physical presence of the Titan that sent chills down the spines of humanity's leaders. It was the sheer magnitude of the moment. For centuries, Earth had hidden these machines, their existence a secret, a last line of defense never meant to be drawn. Now, with the dark tide of the Herald closing in, these titanic machines had no choice but to awaken. Beneath the surface of Mars, Titan 6, the largest of them all, roared into motion. Its towering legs, each step shaking the ground beneath it, shattered the Martian dust as though Earth itself was reacting to the ancient warrior's movements. The giant's face, sculpted with an eerie combination of military precision and an unyielding, almost human-like expression, was a grim reminder of humanity's previous wars, a time when such creations had been necessary. Now, in the face of an unknown enemy, they were the planet's final defenders. On Earth, Alara stood watching the unfolding scene from the command center, her eyes narrowing as Titan 13 began its march. In the deep recesses of her mind, a growing unease stirred. The Herald were waiting. They had positioned themselves too precisely, calculated every movement with disturbing accuracy. This wasn't a typical battle. It wasn't about overwhelming the enemy with numbers or brute force. It was something far more insidious. The Herald were playing a game, and humanity, despite all its technological might, was still the unwitting player. "We're not alone in this," Alara whispered to herself. The realization hit her with the force of a comet. The Herald were not only after Earth, they were after something older, something hidden. And that secret, buried deep within the ruins of Earth's past, could turn the tide of this war. The communication channel buzzed to life, and the voice of the lead strategist, Commander Griggs, broke through the silence. "General, Titan 13 has initiated contact with the Herald's perimeter. We're getting heavy resistance, but they're adapting. It's almost as if they knew we'd use the Titans." Alara's face hardened. This was the moment when humanity would either rise or fall. The Titans were only as powerful as the minds that controlled them, and every second that ticked by now was a precious gamble. "Keep pushing forward," Alara ordered, her voice unwavering. "We need to get closer. Activate Titan 9 and Titan 7. We need the full might of the Guardians." As her order was relayed to the command hubs scattered across the solar system, her mind raced. What were the Herod waiting for? What was their endgame? The question gnawed at her, but there was little time for answers now. As the Guardians made their way toward the center of the solar system, the Herod's ships shifted once again, morphing into a terrifyingly efficient battle formation. Every movement was calculated, their fleets locking into a defense structure that seemed to anticipate every one of Earth's offensive strategies. Out of the darkness of space, their weapons fired for the first time. A series of beams, bright and searing, cut through the void, aimed directly at Earth's advancing Titans. But they weren't just laser blasts. These beams were different. As they impacted against Titan 13's advanced shields, the entire machine shuddered violently. The energy wasn't absorbed, it was dispersed, flowing outward in ripples across the surface of the Titan's form, making it feel as though the entire machine had been knocked backward by the force of an invisible hand. This wasn't just weaponry. It was a force that seemed to manipulate the very fabric of space itself. An entirely new form of weaponry was being used, and the Titans were struggling to adapt. Alara's fingers tightened around the console. The AI was flagging, unable to maintain the required countermeasures to handle the Herod's weapons. It was clear. This was not a battle of strength. The Herod were tapping into something far more powerful, a technology that bent the laws of physics, something beyond even the Titan's advanced systems. "We need a new strategy," she muttered. "We need to adapt, fast." The warships that had launched from Earth's defenses now joined the battle. The Valiant-class cruisers, armed with plasma-based artillery and kinetic shields, sped through space toward the Herod's formations, their engines leaving a trail of blue fire in their wake. The cruisers weaved through the barrage of enemy fire, returning fire with devastating precision. But it was a losing fight. Each shot, each maneuver seemed to only slow the Herod down temporarily, but they were relentless, pressing forward with a unity that Earth had never faced before. Meanwhile, the AI of Earth's ships was learning in real time. As the Herod's energy beams cut through the darkness, Earth's warships shifted their tactics, using subspace anomalies to avoid direct hits. But for every step forward Earth's forces took, the Herod were always 2 steps ahead, adapting at a rate that no human strategist could follow. It wasn't just a battle, it was a war of evolution, and humanity was struggling to keep up. A sudden pulse of energy from the heart of the enemy fleet struck Titan 9, sending shockwaves through the surrounding area. The machine's immense form trembled, its movement slowed, and then, shockingly, it stopped entirely. The pulse was unlike any weapon humanity had ever seen. It was a shockwave that seemed to freeze time itself, suspending the giant in space, rendering it temporarily powerless. "Alara, we're losing the battle," Kessler's voice crackled through the communication line. "They're too powerful. The Titans can't handle this new form of attack." But Alara wasn't listening. Her gaze was locked on the screen, her mind working furiously, calculating every move. She knew what had to be done, but it would take a risk. A calculated gamble that could either destroy Earth's final hope or unlock the key to victory. "Alara," Kessler's voice broke through the tension. "What do we do now?" "We push forward," Alara said, her voice calm and decisive. "We unlock the final key. Activate the Forge." The Forge was a forgotten relic, an ancient facility deep within Earth's crust, built to enhance the Titans with unimaginable power. It hadn't been activated in centuries, until now. Only a handful of people even knew of its existence, but if it could do what Alara hoped, humanity's survival could be guaranteed. And with that, the countdown began. The Forge, buried beneath the rugged landscapes of Earth's forgotten territories, began to hum with life as the ancient machines stirred to wakefulness. Deep within the bowels of the planet, a series of dormant, complex systems flickered into existence, their long-abandoned circuitry coming alive with a surge of power that reverberated through the entire crust. It was as if the Earth itself had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the return of its greatest weapon, the final hope for the survival of humanity. Alara stood before the central command console in the makeshift war room, her fingers pressing against the smooth surface, of the activation panel. The cold metal beneath her touch was a constant reminder of the stakes. The fate of her planet now rested on the activation of an ancient power. She could feel her heart pounding as the systems powered up, her mind running through the countless variables that lay ahead. The Herald had anticipated so much, but they could not have known about the Forge. Earth's ancient defense mechanism, a system designed not only to enhance the Titans, but to harness an energy source so vast it could reshape entire solar systems, was now ready to be deployed. The AI systems that had long been dormant within the Forge pulsed with life, sending ripples of anticipation throughout the command center. There was no turning back now. The question was simple. Could humanity survive this final test? Kessler's voice crackled through her comms once again. Alara, the Herald are pressing harder than ever. Titan 13 is down to 50% capacity, and Titan 6 isn't faring much better. We don't have much time. Her jaw clenched. Activate the Forge. Now, it's our only shot. The Forge's power cores ignited with an intensity that could be seen from space, the energy surging through the planetary core in waves. Above Earth, the battle raged on, but beneath the surface, a cataclysmic shift was taking place. The entire planet seemed to tremble as the Forge's power spread outward, infusing the Titans with an energy unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Their once mechanical movements now seemed alive, as though the machines were awakening from a deep slumber, their systems honed and sharpened by the raw energy now coursing through them. But the Herald had been waiting for this. The massive enemy fleet, their ships pulsating with an eerie violet glow, moved into their final formation. The air in space seemed to thicken as the Herald prepared to unleash everything they had. They had waited, calculated, and now the time had come to strike. They had adapted to humanity's every move, countered every strategy. They knew the Titans were the key to Earth's survival, and they were about to make their move to destroy them all. As the Titans moved into position, each one now augmented by the Forge's power, a strange hum filled the atmosphere, an energy so intense that it vibrated the very fabric of reality. Titan 13, still standing tall, its massive frame now glowing with an ethereal light, stepped forward. The time for defense had passed. The time for the offensive had arrived. Alara watched from the command center as the Titans unleashed their newfound might. Energy beams streaked across the battlefield, cutting through the void of space with a deafening roar. But the Herald had anticipated this. With a flicker of their technology, they raised massive energy shields, rippling with electromagnetic force, to block the attacks. For a moment, it seemed as though the battle would descend into a stalemate, until Titan 6 made its move. The ancient Titan's chest opened, revealing a weapon that hadn't been used in centuries, the chronocore. A relic from a time when humanity's reach extended beyond the solar system, the chronocore had the ability to bend the laws of time itself. It wasn't a weapon of brute force, but rather one of precision, an energy pulse that could disrupt the temporal flow of its target, freezing them in a single frozen moment. It was a weapon of last resort, one that had been feared and forbidden for its potential to destroy entire civilizations. Alara's breath caught as she watched Titan 6 unleash the chronocore. The pulse shot through the void, a blinding sphere of energy that expanded rapidly, displacing the very fabric of time around it. As the wave of energy reached the Herald fleet, everything froze. Space itself seemed to halt, the distant stars, now caught in a stilled moment, the enemy ships suspended mid-flight. It was as if the universe had taken a deep breath, holding itself in place. But time was not something that could be controlled easily. The Herald, resilient as they were, had prepared for this. Their ships, once frozen, began to flicker, their shields resonating with a low hum as they adapted to the chronocore's assault. Slowly, painfully, their ships began to move again, albeit at a slower pace. The Herald had countered the effect of the chronocore, but not without consequence. Alara's eyes widened in disbelief. The Herald had not only withstood the temporal displacement, they had learned how to counter it. The realization hit her hard. There were no guarantees. There was no such thing as an absolute weapon in this war. Every edge that humanity gained, the Herald would find a way to turn it back. The true war, one of adaptation, evolution, and sheer will, was only beginning. But then, something unexpected happened. The harrowed fleet, though still engaged, began to falter. The chronocore had not destroyed them, but it had disrupted their synchrony. Their once perfect formations had been shattered, their coordinated attacks now thrown into disarray. Earth's forces, while still struggling, saw their opportunity. The battle for survival was now a war of attrition, and Earth's titans, fueled by the ancient forge's power, were prepared to keep fighting. As Alara's fingers hovered over the command interface, the countdown to the forge's final activation drew near. The final battle had begun, but it wasn't a fight that could be won with sheer force alone. It was a battle for Earth's soul, a battle that would determine if humanity was truly capable of standing against the dark forces of the universe. And just as the Titans charged into the fray once more, their massive forms glowing with the energy of a dying star, Alara knew one thing for certain: the fight had only just begun.